reason, in my attendee hub, I don't have any of the workshops.
Just started the record there as well. Any of the pre-stuff, we'll cut that if we just share it with any attendees that aren't able to attend today. Internal use.
Yeah, that's what the instructions said, but you think it's fine?
Well, that's like the video player for the collaborative.
Okay, so I'm good.
It's just a Zoom.
Got it. Okay. Well, I think we can go ahead and let everybody in, Jordan. And if there's stragglers, I can wait a bit and admit them from the waiting room, and then I'll probably jump out at like quarter after.
Okay.
And I already
Awesome.
made Kushal a co-host and you're a host.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah, let's
Hey.
admit all. Let's release the
I'll
Kraken.
just-
Awesome. Yeah.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Looks like we got some faces popping into the Zoomiverse here, which is great. Founders, welcome to the workshop session of Sask Startup Summit 2021. Feel free, if you're able to, toss that camera on so our facilitator can see the beautiful faces of the Saskatchewan founders joining us. Some in a couple different groups there, which is awesome. I see Brad, I see Dawson. We got Ian, Callie, Kirk, and many more, which is awesome. So thanks so much, everybody. I'm going to do a quick intro and then toss the mic and get out of the way because we got a great guest facilitator virtually joining us today. So Sask Startup Summit, all about tactical takeaways, actionable insights for Saskatchewan founders to grow globally successful companies. We always look at what are the key topics? What do we need to dive into? Digital ads, customer acquisition is always key. The prices continue to fluctuate or get more important. And how do we know that we're making good spends? So we brought in a guru today who I'm excited to introduce. We have got Kushal Shah joining us. He's coming live from Kelowna today, usually based out of Toronto. He's the founder of Sonic Growth, which is focused on e-commerce, paid social ads management. They've managed over 10 million in ad spend, scaling ad spend for fast-growing DTC brands in Canada. So there's going to be a lot of actionable insights here today. We definitely encourage you to keep the questions and interaction going. So the chat will be on throughout. And then Kushal, feel free if you want to, call to the audience at any time. You're more than welcome. But with that, I'll get out of the way so we can get the most value possible over the next little while. So take it away, Kushal.
No, that's awesome, Jordan. Thanks for the introduction. So yeah, I prepared a few slides. There's actually a bunch of slides, but since you guys will get the deck after, I won't go through everything, but kind of focus on the most important aspects. And then I thought we could leave some time at the end for the questions. So it might be easier then for me to kind of get through the slides. And then, if you guys have questions, we can discuss it after. And I thought the focus for this presentation would be mainly on Facebook ads, as that's kind of the main, honestly, the best platform in terms of not only targeting, but also reporting and attribution. So it's still the most powerful ad platform out there. And if you're not, if you're either not on there or if you're looking to diversify your spend, I would still focus mainly on Facebook and then look to other platforms. And most of the topics that we'll go through are, so this is just a rough agenda. So, we'll talk about initially just the Apple privacy update, iOS 14.5, kind of how Facebook buckets users, how the auction works, then kind of go into the funnel in terms of budget, how you should think about that. And then finally creative, which is also super important, the actual ad assets itself. So a lot of the examples here are for direct to consumer and e-commerce brands, because that's kind of been my experience and what I focus on. But the principles of the auction and setting up the ad accounts in your funnel are kind of universal, whether you're B2B, B2C, or just running even lead gen or email capture campaigns. So this is a bit more technical, but you guys can check out the link after. It's a new update that Apple's released, which essentially is a privacy update that you guys must have seen it on your phones. When you open your phone, there's a huge notification that says, do you want this app to track you or not? So basically, if you say no, it's really bad for Facebook and really bad for the ads, because we can't track what you're doing essentially, and we don't know the actions you've taken. So these are a few steps just that you need to take immediately if you haven't done so, which I hope for those of you who are advertising on Facebook that you guys have already done these things. But which is initially you just need to verify your domain, choose the events you want to optimize for. There's a limit of 8 different events, and then select like one conversion window. So you can see all the data like in Ads Manager. And you just have to be a bit more patient now because essentially where the new way Facebook set up is we're almost going back like 3 or 4 years because we're losing so much data with the privacy updates that it's always good now to just to keep like the ad account structure like really simple and like not overly segmented. Because with Facebook, you can like target certain zip codes, certain geos, like people interested only in like certain like jewelry, for example, or like go really detailed. But it's better now to kind of keep it simple and broad and kind of let Facebook do the heavy lifting with the algorithm, and then also allow the creative to really speak for you. And then like you also kind of need to supplement not only looking at like your Facebook Ads Manager data, because there's delays now with the Apple update that it takes between 48 to 72 hours for conversions to be reported. So you kind of have to look at your Facebook data, but also kind of look at like Google Analytics, like run post-purchase surveys, use unique coupon codes, things like that to actually see like what value the ads are bringing you. Because if you just judge performance based on what you're seeing in Facebook, like it's not going to tell the entire picture. So just broadly, like the way Facebook kind of buckets users is into like clickers, engagers, and buyers. And what's cool is if you actually go to your own profile, like in Facebook, you can kind of see like how Facebook's classified you. So this is just a screenshot of like my own profile based on like the actions I've taken, right? Like across Facebook and Instagram, even WhatsApp, like over the last like few years. So, it knows that my birthday is in September, that I've lived in India. I'm a Gmail user. I'm an admin of different Facebook pages, things like that. I own an iPhone 6. So this is the stuff that then you can use to target. That's how Facebook essentially uses this data to then allow you to target people you want based on like demographics, interests, and things like that. And so, yeah, so in terms of how the ad auction actually works, each ad is kind of has like an ad value. So if you look here, like these two parts are like the most important. So essentially one function of the formula is like the amount you bid or your budget. So it doesn't mean you have to start with like a massive budget. Like I would usually start with at least $50 or $100 a day if you are able to do that. And then what's more important is like the actions that are taken on the ad, right? So, that's where the creative is important and the targeting, because even if you bid like $500, but the ad isn't relevant, or like the objective that you're optimizing for, like just doesn't make sense for your business, then like no one's going to take any actions. And then essentially like the ad will have a really low ad value and you're just not going to get like the outcomes that you want. And then this addition here is basically once you run ads for like a few weeks, Facebook will start to survey users like randomly based on like the actual ad that they've seen. And if people are like, listen, this like ad doesn't make sense, like why am I seeing this? Again, that's going to negatively affect your ad value score, and it'll just make it harder for you to then like win in the auction, and you're just not going to be able to like get the desired outcome. So you have to always kind of choose the objective that you want. So suppose, if you want to get purchases, but you don't have a ton of traffic yet, like you may need to start like higher up in the funnel to essentially get traffic to the site first, and then kind of move to, the last outcome that you want, if it's like app installs or collecting emails or something like that. So yeah, we'll talk about the funnel setup like in the next slide. This is just, like a basic funnel, which I'm sure you guys know, but like, this is more interesting. So this is kind of like the typical like mix for e-commerce brands, where we're spending like a few $100,000 a month on their campaigns, because they're really aggressive in terms of no one really comes to their site unless we're running ads. And a lot of the focus of the budget is, even though I work with Canadian brands, like the main focus is in North America, like in the States. So you can see here, like probably 70% of the budget's focused on like pure acquisition, which would kind of be like when you go into Facebook would be like the conversion objective, or like running add to cart. Like running this stuff like brand awareness, traffic, video views, like doesn't really it's not like the best way to spend your budget. Like this stuff is only good if you're like really brand new, you don't have anything happening on the website. But the minute you even have like a few organic conversions, whether it's like app installs or like actual purchases on your site, like you can literally just start to move like all of your budget to like direct conversion ads. I think a lot of times people make mistakes where like, you need to start with like brand awareness or like pure traffic, but Facebook's just so good at knowing like the people who are shoppers, like especially if you're advertising like in the States, with all the data that it has, like it will find people who are likely to buy, as long as your creative is good and you have the account set up correctly. And yeah, and then these are kind of like the metrics to look at. So if you do run some more upper funnel, like traffic type of campaigns, you could set up, because you're not going to see like direct conversions or sales come in. So, you'd have to look at secondary metrics like click-through rates, the amount of video views, the video view percentage, things like that. But the nice thing about conversion ads is, you spend $100 today, you can directly see kind of the return on ad spend like the same day, essentially. And so, yeah, this is like another, like one of the most important things I've seen, like when auditing accounts, is there's no structure between like cold, warm, and hot, like essentially like different stages of like a funnel. So we'll get into kind of like what that means. So essentially like a cold audience is like pure prospecting. Let me move this. So, anyone who has never heard of your brand, right? So in this case, it could literally just be like a broad audience, women, 18 to 55 in the US interested in online shopping. It could even be like a lookalike audience based off like a seed list. So if you guys have like at least the minimum size you need is like 100 emails or phone numbers. So if you have that, you can upload that to Facebook and then essentially make an audience of that list that kind of looks like that. And the 1 to 10% is essentially a percent of the population of the country. So if you do, 1% of the US would be like 1% of the population of the states, like on Facebook. But the whole point of this setup is you're kind of breaking out your targeting into 3 buckets. So cold would be people who don't know anything about your brand. You need to introduce them to like what you're about. And then warm is essentially like retargeting. So, once they take an action, whether they like engage with the ad, like it, click on it, comment it, or take one step further and actually land on your website, then you can kind of segment that out as well. And then the last step is like hot, which is essentially like if you already have existing customers that you want to directly, send ads to. So the important thing is to like not only set it up like in this way, but to also like add exclusions. So if you don't, because essentially to make an audience completely cold, you actually need to like exclude all this stuff like in your ad, in like ads manager, right? Because if I want to target, say like, people like 18 to 55 in like Canada, and I want people who've never heard of me, like I need to make sure I exclude anyone who's follows me on Instagram, people who've been to the site, people who've bought from me, things like that. So you keep it really clean. And then when you look at the data after, like you'll have different targets essentially for these different funnel stages. And obviously like the lower you go, like you'll see better metrics, but you can't really grow these buckets unless you kind of spend on cold initially, because these audience sizes are limited, right? Like people who've been to your website, liked you on Instagram, like in some cases, if you're like a smaller brand, like you may only have like 10,000 site visitors in the last month or like in the last 180 days, or, you'll have like 3,000-4,000 Instagram followers. So you can't even spend more than like a few $100 like a week if you wanted to, just because the audiences are so small that the frequency, like the amount of time a person would see the ad would just go out of control, and then Facebook would penalize you. So that's why you kind of have to spend majority, like 70 to 80% of your budget on kind of these broad, big interest-based audiences. Because even in Canada, it's still like 20 million people almost. If you have a product that has like universal appeal, if it's like kind of niche or specific, like you could obviously use like interest targeting. But I would say like you at least need like an audience of like 1 to 2 million, even if it is quite niche, to then start with the cold audiences and then kind of move them like further down the funnel. Yeah, this stuff you can look into after. It's more about like once you kind of have like a budget set, what to look at. One thing that's important is like the learning phase, which you guys will start to see like in your actual ad account. And Facebook essentially defines it as like 50 conversion events in a 7-day window. So if you're optimizing for purchases, like for people to buy, then you essentially need to get 50 people to buy in 7 days to exit the learning phase, and then the ads will have optimized the most efficiently, and then you should start to see more performance. So obviously the challenge is like, it's very hard to kind of get 50 conversions in a 7-day period if you're just a brand new brand, or you don't have like a ton of traffic happening. So that's why then you kind of have to start with like other objectives, which would be like slightly higher up in the funnel, just to kind of get those actions. So like if you look at that, the first slide, which was talking about this, like the actions completed. So essentially, like if you're running like a click, so like an add to cart, you should at least get like 50 of those in a 7-day period for then the ads to be like optimized. So if you're starting purely with conversion ads and you don't have enough purchases on the site, like it'll just make it really difficult for Facebook to find people who are most likely to buy. So that's why like it is important to kind of keep that in mind when you're looking to start, and then choose like the right objective accordingly. Like if you're brand new, then you may need to go like higher in the funnel and then start from there. Cool. So yeah, and then I just wanted to get a bit into the creative, because that honestly, like once you set up the ad account like in this way, in terms of setting up the funnels and creating your audiences, adding the exclusions, like there's not that many more levers you can pull, because even in cold audiences, there's literally like broad, interest, demographic, or like lookalike. So there's just 4 buckets here, and then your retargeting is limited by like your audience sizes, and there's again like you can only do people who've been to the site and the actions they've taken there, or like your engagement list. So once like this stuff is set up, you can obviously get into more like audience testing here. But then like the biggest lever you can pull after all of that is the creative. And I have seen like strong creatives can even carry like a poorly set up account. And in some cases, like it can like change the entire account. Like I've run creative sometimes where just the messaging is so strong and gets so much engagement. You can run with one like video ad or one static ad for months on end, and like literally put like, it can carry the account, like put 100,000 spend like behind it for like months on end, and it'll just keep converting. So it is important to kind of always focus on that and like find something that works. And yeah, like everything's kind of focused on mobile now. Like even if you guys probably look at your analytics, like I would assume like 70-80% of the traffic is like coming from the phone. So it's just like the simple stuff that Facebook always talks about, like does it grab attention? Does it communicate a benefit? And is there like an easy call to action? So just make it really simple for the end user. This stuff was taken from some of the Facebook events I've been to in the past. So what's important here is like I put links to like the Facebook Creative Hub so you guys can look at it after. But obviously like video creative usually performs the best for like most brands. It's not always the case. It's just people consume more video now, and like even the platform kind of favors it. So if you do have like good video creative, like I would definitely recommend that. But if not, you can start with just like static images, carousels, like even just adding some motion to images, like a slideshow can help. But what's crazy is that, people on average, I think the average watch time is like less than 3 seconds for a video ad on Facebook. So you kind of literally have to like ensure like the first 3 seconds kind of communicate, are like very engaging and kind of talk about the brand, and then like lead with the hook. So you see here like 47% of the value is delivered in the first 3 seconds. And yeah, this is like one of the lines like Facebook loves to say, which is like, most people I think have their phones on mute, like especially on Instagram. So kind of want to design for sound off, but delight with sound on. If you want to add like some kind of music or something like that. And then yeah, this is like the simple format that I've seen like most high converting videos follow, where you kind of start with like a problem statement, like in the first 2 seconds, and then you kind of immediately get into like how your brand or product can solve it, and then you kind of get into like a specific feature or benefit of that product. And then yeah, this stuff is just more technical in terms of like, setting up the actual ad unit, like always having like text on the ad. Like this is for like a story ad unit. So especially for stories, when it kind of takes over the entire screen, like you need to have text overlays on it, or people like have no context. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. Like Facebook's come a long way to like provide more info on like creative best practices, just like on that Creative Hub link. So you guys can take a look at that later on. And then yeah, this is kind of just their standard template for like creative fatigue. So like the ads do get tiring, right? Like I'm sure you guys have also seen like the same ad sometimes over and over again. So it is important to kind of get into like a cadence of like refreshing creative as so it would depend on like brand to brand, but I would say like at least like once or twice a month, if you could try to refresh some of the creative would be good. And also depending on performance, right? Like if the ads are just not working, if the click-through rates are really low, like you need to change the ads, because it's probably like a sign that it's just not going to perform if after the first 2 or 3 days you're not seeing any traction. And I would say like in what's more important actually is in like in retargeting is where you'd probably need to refresh the creative more often, because the audiences are smaller, so they're going to see the ads more often. But in these audiences, right, when you're targeting like a bigger 1 million plus, like, and if you're only spending like $50, $100 a day, like you're going to reach like such a small percentage of the audience that like you don't really need to change the creative often if you found like a winning creative. So I always like to find like winning evergreen ads, like evergreen, which means I can run like kind of always on, like in these buckets. And then down here is like you can get like a bit more tactical with the messaging. You can test different formats, different creative, and then probably refresh stuff down here more as people who like are familiar with the brand will start to see the ads like more and more often. Yeah, so that. And yeah, it's just about like the way I would usually test creative, because obviously, if you have like a bunch of different creative, like the simplest way is to kind of just like test like one variable at a time and then go from there. Because, if you test like a bunch of different variables at the same time, it's really hard to figure out like what's working and what isn't. So yeah, I think like after setting up the structure, like the next most important thing is to find like an evergreen creative that can work really well to introduce people to the brand or the site, and then kind of get into iterating on that like piece of creative after that. I think, yeah, that is it. I've also like, yeah, I started, we have like a YouTube channel that you guys can check out after, that just has like more content with examples and stuff that could answer some more questions in detail. But yeah, sorry, I felt like I talked for a long time. So, but yeah, happy to answer any questions you guys have now.
Awesome. Thanks, Kushal. I'm sure the founders and team on here have quite a few questions. This is an important topic, but I think Brad tossed in the chat, maybe first question there, would love to know if you give some examples of like maybe one of your best creative ads, or, one that gained the most traction or ROI for you. If you could possibly like describe that or share a fable. Yeah,
for sure. So I guess like I would say if you look at like Kickstarter, like any kind of Kickstarter infomercial style ad, like those ones are usually like the best performing. So even if you would just Google now and kind of see like top performing video creative from Kickstarter, like I would kind of follow like that formula where, super fast paced, really kind of communicating the benefits like early on, things like that stuff like usually works really well. Also depending on like the type of brand now, like if the product has like a founder focus, like even having the founders kind of speak to the brand, like that stuff works really well because people relate to it and kind of feel that they're supporting the brand. So I'd say like those two angles are like really good. And sorry, I should have mentioned, if you look at if you, I should add this actually, if you go to Facebook ads library, like let me, you can just open it up. You can actually see any active, any brands like active ads at the moment. So let me just quickly share my screen. Okay, so okay, cool. Yeah, so this was the one of the brands that I used to work at in 2019, Majuri, which is like an online jewelry brand. So essentially, if you just Google like Facebook ads library, it'll go to this website. And then what's awesome is you can type in like any brand that you want, as long as they have a Facebook page and the advertising. Like you can actually see like the active ads that they're running. And then, you know, if you click into like the ad details, you can even see like the landing page and stuff if you click on it. So it'll give you like a really good idea in terms of like what your competitors are running or like what type of ad units are working. And then usually like they don't tell you obviously like the performance or the spend, but if you look at kind of ads that have been running for a long time, that kind of gives you a hint, right? That, okay, if this ad's been running for like 3 months or 6 months, like it's obviously working. So you can kind of use that like as like, it looks like they launched this stuff in September, but you know, sometimes they may have ads running for a while. You can look at the date. And if it's like still running, then it's like, okay, cool. Like this ad's like probably doing quite well.
That's awesome. Super valuable resource. Kushal, I'll toss it over. I think next question we got John, and then we'll toss it over to Dawson as well. So John from Service Box, if you want to jump on.
Okay. Kushal, thanks. I appreciated your slides that you did there. One of the things I'm wondering about is scaling. What we've kind of observed as we scale is that it's not a linear scaling for online ads. So I wanted to get a kind of a better idea of what you suggest when companies start really trying to get that not hyper growth, but exceptional growth, if you will. Want to keep putting money towards ads, but are just keep finding that the cost per lead just starts getting crazy. You know, it's almost like as you turn the tap on, it costs way more. So I just don't know if there's strategies that you have in order to say, hey, when you're at the $2,000 mark, this is what you do. At the $10,000 mark, this is what you do. When you're at the 20,000, like it's not linear. That's something I know for sure. So I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, unfortunately, like that's kind of the nature of like Facebook ads and online acquisition. Like when you just start out, like you're going to get the lowest hanging fruit, and the more you spend and scale, like you're going further and further away from like the lowest hanging fruit. So each incremental conversion, whether it's a lead or a purchase, will start to get more expensive. So the way to kind of combat that is like you have to then get into like audience testing and creative testing. So you know, make sure that you have different ad sets, whether it's like, you know, like interest lookalikes, things like that, and then kind of set different targets for each audience. And like you're saying, if you have like a threshold of like, you know, we've hit our max of like $2 a lead on this one, like you just need to kill it and kind of launch like a new audience, essentially, like a new ad set. Because again, it's going to kind of start from the beginning, right? And try to find like the best users there. So, and especially like if you have, if you already know like a few creatives that are winners that are giving you like the lowest leads, like you can just pick the winners and then move them into kind of like a new campaign, essentially, that then has like those new audiences with the new winners. So, because essentially it's like the other thing is if you find things that are working, like just don't mess with it, because it's like really hard to then like replicate the performance. So what I always like to do is like have one campaign just for testing. So say, you know, you have like one campaign that you do want to test a bunch of audiences, a bunch of new creative, just keep that as a separate campaign and then do all your testing within that. And then only once you find like a really good ad that's like at your threshold of like cost per leads, then you can kind of move it into like your main like evergreen like hero campaigns, for example. But yeah, unfortunately, there's no, that's like just the nature of the game. It's like the more you spend, like it just gets harder and harder to keep like the costs low. But yeah, you just have to kind of then like optimize the ads and then also look at like what's happening on the landing page and kind of see if you can do anything on that side of the funnel.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
The next question, Kushal, I think that jumped in there was Dawson was just asking, how long do you typically run split tests for? Any factors that you factor in for length of split tests?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on like the budget that you have, but if the budget's pretty low, because for like a real split test, I think you need to run it for at least like 7 to 14 days and spend like a, meaningful amount, like probably like a few $1,000s. But like most brands kind of don't have that budget. So I literally would just run it for like 3 days and look at kind of the secondary metrics. So, you can look at like the click-through rates for the creative. Is it super low? Kind of like what actions people are taking. And if those signs like the cost per click, click-through rate, like cost per ad to cart, like those secondary metrics, like I'm not seeing anything happening, then I would, between the two, then I'd kind of just make a decision on my own instead of waiting for like Facebook. Because I think like you don't really need to wait like too long, because usually like after the first like 24 hours or 48 hours, if like the metrics don't really improve, like it's not really going to change like after that. So you can kind of tell like right out of the gate, right? Like if something's going to perform or not. So I'll just use that like as the metric. And then, like I'd say probably after 3 days.
Awesome. I'm sure the budgets are often a little closer or preferred to be closer to 3 days versus 7 to 14. So that's probably an answer people were excited to hear. Next one, we got Jess with a couple. So first, like thoughts on other platforms. I know we targeted, Facebook is kind of your prime one today. But Instagram, Pinterest, maybe any strategies or thoughts of where would you go next if you're optimizing Facebook?
So Instagram would be covered under this. Like I just meant Facebook as like, everything. I think it depends on like the type of, like Jessica, like what type of product are you involved in?
Yeah, we're a B2C and we're all about story and story capture digitally. So we're just starting at Pinterest. And we think it's a proactive audience, as we understand it. They're looking to get organized. So we think it's a good spot for us, but we're in our first month and we kind of set it and forget it, which is what follows up my next question too, is when you look at split testing, what you recommend as far as how you compare to.
Yeah, I would, if you're just starting out, I'd honestly say like, I wouldn't put like too much paid budget on Pinterest. Like you could start just building out like your organic Pinterest boards first. So, build that out, because even if you just start running ads, like people will click on your profile and then kind of be like, oh, there's nothing happening like on the organic side. Like, what is this brand?
Yeah, we did do a pretty good job. Like we have a pretty good wall of tools and guides and things like that, just to get so that it looks like we have a presence already.
Yeah,
but
for sure. Yeah, I would say I would still focus like 70 to 80% of the budget kind of on Facebook and Instagram. And because with Pinterest, the issue is it's like really hard to get any attribution. So you will see like traffic and people coming from Pinterest to your site, but like whenever you look in Pinterest, you're not going to see any results, or in Google Analytics, like the attribution just isn't good. So a lot of people just use it as like a traffic driver, but again, it's like really hard to know like is the quality of traffic good. So what I would do is like you could set up like unique UTMs for those Pinterest campaigns, and then kind of take a look at the analytics in Google Analytics and look at the bounce rates and stuff and see. And then you could also put like unique coupon codes like in the Pinterest ad copy or like the image itself to kind of see like over time if anything is coming from there. What's nice about Pinterest is like the pins kind of always live on and can be discovered over time. So it is good to like build, but I found that more from like the organic side. So so I'd focus on that.
That's good to know. And my second question was really back to kind of that split. Like we're running some different tests, and so is your recommendation, if you limited budget, best to do the same ad with a couple different audiences, or a different ad with the same audience and see what one responds best? If you're which one do you think you see the clearer results with?
Yeah, I would always say like the first most important thing is to like find the winning creative. Like across platforms, like whether it's like Pinterest, TikTok, Facebook, because like that will have like the biggest impact over time. And then like once you find that hero creative, then kind of get into like audience testing demographics, ages and stuff. Like so you could literally just start like super broad, if the app is like for everyone. Yeah, just like find which creative kind of is resonating the most, has the best click-through rates, best engagement, is bringing people to the site, and then kind of use that and then get into like testing audiences.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Kushal, maybe just on that, like when you talked about before, as you're thinking about like the winning creative, just wondering if you have any recommendations. Like obviously every product's different, every customer is different, but like any tips or tricks for headlines and text of like how to approach those and do's, don'ts, any things that groups can do, especially if it's a case where maybe like the founders doing the creative or team is, but yeah, any tips or tricks with headlines and text?
Yeah, for sure. Like I would say like it just has to be like if you think of your own experience like using Instagram and stuff, right? Like when an ad sometimes looks like too much like an ad, you like immediately kind of scroll past it and you just like it's like what is like it's too much, like I don't care. So sometimes just making things like look more organic, look more natural, like does help, and I have seen it work better. That's why like a lot of the fashion brands I work with use like influencer content too, because it just looks like someone real kind of talking to you, whether it's a video or like an image. So yeah, I just say to keep it like short and sweet, right? Like people don't have time, and there's so much happening like on the platforms all the time, but like you just need to get the message across like super quick. So like longer form copy does work, but like it's more if you needed to like really explain the product. But if it's like something really simple, like I would say like maximum like follow kind of like the limits, right? Like a few lines of text, like kind of always having, if it's video, like having subtitles in the video. If it's an image, you can always add like an overlay to kind of drive the point more. Things like that. But yeah, honestly, there's no like hard and fast rules. Like it does really depend on the brand, but those are kind of like some of just the generic best practices, I would say. And then yeah, you can get into like testing like a few variations. But I found like a lot of people, like especially we don't have like obviously like an in-house creative team or graphic designer, like using like the TikTok camera to like film ads and then like downloading it, because like I think the cameras like you can like do like really crazy cuts and like add overlays and like motion and stuff like that. So but I think they have like the TikTok watermark now on it, which kind of sucks. But if you don't care about like the branding aspect, then you can still use that.
Use the TikTok camera. That's a good tip. Other questions from founders? I know ad spend is like a hot topic. It's sometimes a challenging budget item. Any other questions you want to hit with Kushal today?
Yeah, Kushal, what would like be a good starting budget for a new product?
Yeah, for sure. Like I would say like at least like I usually start with like at least $100 a day if you can. I think the biggest the hardest thing and like mistake I've seen people do is like sometimes they start with like 500 a day, run it for like 3 days, not see anything, then pause everything for like a few weeks, and then like, okay, now we'll try something new. But it just makes it so much harder, right? So it's almost like, okay, even if you can start with like $50 or like $20 a day, but just kind of keep it always on. And then that way, like you're giving your pixel, like it's getting more data, right? You're getting more event fires, like Facebook's learning more about the people who are going to interact with your brand, and it's going to go find those people. So like you kind of have to have it always on if possible. And then yeah, then get into like actually testing stuff. But yeah, I would say like if possible, like at least like $100 a day. Because the issue is now like with the Apple iOS stuff, because so many people like opt out, like you're getting less event fires back because people who've opted out of tracking, like Facebook doesn't know who they are. So even if someone who's opted out sees your ad, clicks on it, like we're not getting that data until like 48 hours later, and it's also modeled. Like it's not 100% accurate. So it makes it even harder, right? With like less data being passed back. So that's kind of why like it sucks, because like the Apple updates actually made it way harder for like small businesses. And like the clients I work with who are brand new or, spending like that $100 a day are like struggling the most. And like bigger brands, who can spend $500,000 a day because they're already getting so much traffic from other sources. There's like so many event fires happening on the site that Facebook already kind of knows like who to go after. So in there, like in those cases, we're like focusing more on the creative side and things like that. But for small businesses, it has been like really challenging, like since June, when like that privacy update like really kicked in. So yeah, so that's why like keeping the account also like super simple, like not overly segmented. Like, you know, if you're spending like $50 a day, like you can't have like 25 active ad sets. You're just like spreading yourself too thin. So like I would just like have like 2 or 3 active campaigns, like a few active ad sets at a time, and even just like two or three pieces of creative at a time. You're just like helping Facebook then like use the like you're just using the power of like the algorithm, or if you like limit all that stuff. So that's what I would do.
Kushal, maybe I'll sneak in one more question. I know we got just 2 minutes left, but so obviously this Apple update, you say, you know, I think earlier today, like that set the ad spend and like everything back like a few years, 3-4 years, whatever that is. So kind of change the landscape. But what direction do you see things heading? Like, are we going to see more of that? Is it going to be more difficult to target ads? And where do you think the ad space is going? And maybe, you know, like we're hyper focused on like Sales Monday, but if we're thinking about sales in like 12 months and the direction either
Yeah.
Apple or other securities going, like where do you think we're headed, and what do you think brands are going to need to do to be good at you know, lead generation through ads?
No, for sure. It's crazy. Like I think because until like 3 months ago, like you could just set up like a drop shipping store, not really build a brand, and just scale like your Facebook ads from like $100 to like $10,000 a month if you just had like a good product. And you didn't have to worry about like building a brand, building a community, you know, all that stuff. But I think that's become more important now, where like you do have to focus like on the branding side and like really have like other levers to pull apart from paid. So, you know, whether it's like building out, like getting like regular like PR press, building out like an influencer strategy, like focusing on like SEO, like you need to kind of have like all those other organic pillars like working, because yeah, it is going to get, because I think by like 2022, there's even going to remove, like I think Chrome and Google are like removing like cookie tracking or something like that. So that's also going to like make it worse probably next year. But and on the flip side, like Facebook is still like the best place, because the other like Pinterest, Snapchat, TikTok, like their ad platforms just aren't as sophisticated. So they've been hit even worse with the iOS update. So it's almost like Facebook's still like the best place to advertise, even with the update. But yeah, I would say like you really need to kind of have like other sources of traffic now, which then comes from like building like a real community and stuff, which makes it hard. So that's why like it's also a blessing now, right? Like all those kind of like those kind of scammy brands that you used to see like on Instagram, I just these random like, you know, drop shipping companies are like not there anymore. Like you may see it yourself now, like the ads are just reduced. So the costs have actually reduced a bit, like the CPMs on Facebook, they've come down because so many of those advertisers have just like had to drop out. So it's exciting. Like I think there's like an opportunity for like all these companies here where like, you know, like real like innovative, cool companies that have like a unique value proposition. You can kind of take advantage of that like over the next 6 months for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love what you said about just the building an actual brand, but also the community. I think that's key, and you know, kind of those first 100 customers, first 10 customers, whatever that is. So love that stuff. Well, I know it's 10:45. We got a schwack of workshops and things happening for founders on the back end here today. So I don't want to delay them. And Kushal, we want to give you a huge thanks for joining us virtually today from hopefully sunny Kelowna, BC. We'll give you a virtual round of applause there from the crew. Yeah, we really appreciate you coming in. If you're willing to share your slide deck, we'd love to distribute that just to the group that's attended today. Thanks for showing your email there as well if there's a follow-up questions. But yeah, thanks so much. We really appreciate having you at Sask Startup Summit. And founders, just a reminder, we got a bunch of goodies planned for you today, and hit your attendee hub for kind of all your wayfinding through the Cvent platform. But thank you for joining, and Kushal, thanks for your presentation today.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye, everybody.